Hi everyone, I'm Jen with Hidden River Creative, and today I hope you're excited because we have a Halloween card. Today I'm making this card, which is a shaker card. Isn't that cute? So stick around and see how I did it. Who's excited about this card? I am. Okay, so I'm starting here with a panel of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White, cut to 3 1/8 by 4 3/8. And I'm just going to create like a spooky sky background. I'm going to use 4 colors of Altenew fresh dye inks. And I'm going to start with pure graphite. And then I'm going to go to Midnight Violet, and then Fuchsia, and then Autumn Blaze. Just blending those in that order down this card panel, making sure to overlap each section just a little bit. Not really worrying about getting a smooth blend. These are going to dry back. But as I ink blend this, I'm just going to speed this up and turn on some music so that it's not so boring. Okay, doesn't it look like a spooky sky? Well, not quite yet because I have to add stars. So I'm grabbing my titanium white gouache, gonna spray a little bit of water into that. And then I'm taking my fan brush and my splatter box because I don't want to get this everywhere, and just splattering that all over the topmost portion of my card to create some stars. Now I'm just going to set that to the side and it's time to start die cutting. So I'm grabbing all of my dies from the Haunted House Spellbinders die set. And I grabbed everything from this die set except the little steps that come with it because I don't really need those. So I'm cutting my moon from this yellow cardstock scrap. And I'm also going to cut the bottom part of my haunted house from this yellow cardstock because I wanted to create some windows to the house and like a glow from the light inside. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a moment. Here I am just applying some Stick It adhesive to the back of my cardstock pieces so that I don't have to glue these down to my acetate, because sometimes when you try to glue to acetate, it seeps out of the sides and it can ruin your shaker window. So I'd rather just use some double-sided adhesive here, so that's why I'm using the Stick It adhesive sheets. So I'm just peeling off the backer to this and applying that to my cardstock so that when it comes out of my die cut machine, these are essentially stickers that I can just stick onto my cardstock panel. In hindsight, I didn't need to cut the windows out of this yellow, not out of the yellow cardstock, but I didn't need to apply the Stick It adhesive to the back. And it really almost drove me insane trying to get the backers off of those tiny little pieces. And I cut that out of this video because it was insane. Anyway, I am just continuing to apply this adhesive to the backs of all the cardstock pieces that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to take these to my die cut machine and cut them out. And here I'm popping out all of those tiny little windows, and you can see what I'm talking about. They are so tiny. Please don't do this to yourself. I'm just going to roll with it because that's what I did, but next time I will just cut them out of cardstock with no adhesive backing and glue those suckers down because that would have been so much easier. I'm just putting these in a little tray because I know myself and I will lose them if I don't. So I'm going to put those to the side and cut my other die cut pieces. I cut my house from a gray cardstock, and I was just putting that on my panel to see how that looked against that background. And then I took, for my frame pieces, I cut those from the stitched rectangle frames from Fawn. I just used the second largest size for those. And then I cut 8 of those out actually to help really beef up my shaker window without using foam tape to give it some stability. And don't ask me why in the world I was ink blending directly onto my glass mat, because that is just a recipe for disaster. I'm either going to drag my hand through it and put it on my card panel or something else. So I found my brain and pulled out my waffle flower grip mat and started my ink blending on that. But don't worry, I'll make another mistake here later on and you'll see what I'm talking about. So just roughly applying ink to this haunted house, starting with pure graphite, and then I'm going to come in with some lava rock, which is more of a brown color, and I'm going to add some of that throughout the house too, just to give it kind of a distressed, spooky, smoky feel. I think that's what I love about this card, is that I didn't have to take too much care or time to create a soft blend or a smooth blend. I could just quickly throw some ink on some of these die cuts, and that was that. So I just periodically checked my haunted house against my background to see how it was going to look, because it's hard to see on a grip mat when you're ink blending and there's ink all over the place. Here I'm coming in with Autumn Blaze on my moon. I just wanted to create a orange gradient across my moon, make it darker on one side, lighter on the other. So I'm just starting on the right hand side and pulling that ink to the left across this die cut. And again, I'll periodically just get my card panel, put it against that to see if I need to add more ink or if we're good to go. So I think I'm going to add a little bit more here. Again, just starting on the right side, pulling that across. I'm typically using a pretty light hand on a lot of this ink blending because you don't want it to be too harsh. So just make sure you use a really light hand, because you can always add more ink. You can't take it away. Here I found my brain again and decided, you know what? I'm not going to stick these windows directly to my acetate, because I think this house is going to be sticking up from the acetate and it's just going to look weird. So I put a piece of black cardstock on the back that I trimmed to just fit behind those window openings. And then I'll just adhere those little window pieces to the inside, and I didn't need the stick it adhesive at all. So now I'm going to come in with the Autumn Blaze, and I'm just going to create sort of a glow on these windows. So I'm putting a very, very small amount of ink, using my brush very lightly to apply it to one side of each of these windows. On the rightmost windows, I'm going to apply it to the right side of the window. On the leftmost windows, goodness gracious, I'm going to apply it to the left side so that it looks like the glow is coming in from all sides. It probably makes 0 sense, but you'll see once these are put in place. For my door, I did cut that from the yellow cardstock. I ended up not liking it once I applied the ink. I started here with some of the pure graphite, and it still just looked too yellow. So I'm going to try again. I'm sorry, that was not pure graphite. That was lava rock. Anywho, I grabbed my Espresso fresh dye ink, applied that to the yellow window still, just too yellow. I didn't like it. So I grabbed the gray one and ink blended that espresso ink onto that one, and I ended up liking that a lot better. So that's what I'll use. I'm just applying the ink to the right side and a little bit to the bottom to create a shadow. And then I'm going to clean my mat, and oh, I got it on my die cut. What a fool. Why did I have that sitting there while I was cleaning off my mat? Anyway, it ends up being fine. I'll just put a cloud over it, but did you see me shove it away? Like, get away from me, moon. It's not the moon's fault. So anyway, quickly gathered myself and carried on. I'm just applying some of that leftover pure graphite lava rock mixture of ink on my blending brush to these ghosts to create a little shadow on the sides and create some dimension. And then I'm going to come in and do something similar on my clouds. Just going to apply ink roughly across those in a very, very light hand just to create some shadow on those clouds. Otherwise, they're just really bright white and they don't really go with the look of the card. So now it's time to adhere some of these frames. Again, I cut 8 of those from Concord and Ninth black cardstock. And I'm just going to start with one frame, apply some liquid glue, and then adhere that to my background panel here. Press that down, and then I will take 6 of the frames and glue those to each other, and then eventually glue those to the top of this frame that I just applied. I chose to use a stack of frames rather than foam tape because I just feel like that gives it more stability when you do it that way. Sometimes I feel like the foam tape is easily squished down, so I did it this way instead. Now I have all 6 of those glued together and I'm going to glue those down to this panel, and that creates my shaker barrier so that all my little bits have room to move, but they don't fall out of the card. Now I have my acetate piece, which I cut to 3 1/8 by 4 3/8, just like my background there. Instead of glue, because I don't want it to squeeze out the sides and ruin my shaker piece like we discussed earlier, I'm just applying some double-sided tape. This is just tape that I've had for a very long time. I'm pretty sure it's from Stampin' Up. But I'm applying that to each of the sides, and you'll see like it's a little bit bigger than the frame width, but that's fine. I'll just fold the extra adhesive back over itself and it won't show on the outside of the card. So I'm just going to remove these backer pieces. And like I said, that excess, I'll just take my finger, fold it back over on itself, and it's totally fine. So I'm just going to keep removing these backer pieces. Having a pokey tool like the one I have here is so helpful when doing this, because if you try to pull this off just using your fingers, it will drive you crazy. And you might even rip your panel, which you don't want to do. So please don't do that. Just get a little pokey tool. They're amazing. I have lots of them. So now that I have all of my excess folded back over, I'm going to grab my acetate piece and just stick that down to this panel. And then I will use a little bit of liquid glue to adhere that down to the top of my panel, which you'll see here in a minute. Here I'm just pouring in my shaker bits. These are from Trinity Stamps. It's the Hocus Pocus embellishment mix. I probably used about 1/3 of the bag. And then I'll take my acetate topper, glue that down with a very small amount of liquid glue, and I applied that as close to the outside of my border as possible. And then it's time for my card base. My card base is from Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110 pound. It's a top folding note card, and I'm just applying some black gouache splatter to that. And then I'm going to choose my sentiments. Here I have the Spellbinders Mini Everyday Sentiments. This is a foil set, a hot foil set. These are great to have just prepared ahead of time, which you can see that I did. I grabbed a happy birthday sentiment. I'll tell you why in a moment. And then I cut out a boo from the boo dies from Whimsy Stamps to apply to the top of my card. You can see it has those extra pieces for the center of the boo. I decided I didn't want to use those. And then I'm just going to place my shaker panel onto my card base with some double-sided adhesive. I'll apply that across the back of my card, and then you'll see that I come in also with some liquid glue along these tape strips, and that just gives me a little extra wiggle room as I'm trying to get my shaker window centered on my card base. So I'll remove all of those backers, and then I'll come in with my liquid glue and apply a line of glue right onto this double-sided adhesive, and then I'll stick that down to my card panel. So the reason I chose the happy birthday sentiment is because basically all of my children were born close to Halloween. So my oldest loves Halloween, and this is going to be his birthday card. I thought it would be fun to give him a shaker card because he thinks those are so cool. So this will go to him. I'm just centering my shaker panel on my card base, and voila. Isn't that cute? This is so fun. I love this card. So now I'm just placing that boo at the top of my card to get an idea of where I want to place it. And then I decided, you know what? I want to do an ombre effect on this. So I'm grabbing my Autumn Blaze ink, applying that just to the top of this sentiment piece to create an ombre effect. So I'm going heavy at the top and then pulling that down lighter across the die cut. Perfect. I love how that looks. So then I'm going to apply just a bit of liquid glue where that die cut is going to touch my frame there, and then I'll adhere that down. And then I'll do the same for the happy birthday sentiment. I'm going to place that across the bottom of my haunted house here. But first, let me fiddle with this boo a little bit. I'm just going to adhere it down in a couple more places where it touches some of the cardstock. I don't want to put glue on my acetate panel. How many times am I going to say that? I don't know. So now, gluing the happy birthday sentiment down, and my card front is done. Now for the inside, because we can't just leave the inside blank. I'm going to take a cardstock panel that's cut just smaller than my card base. I'm going to apply more of that black gouache to the top left and bottom right of that. And then I'm going to come in with my pretty pink Posh Trick or Treat Friends stamp set. I'm going to grab that Happy Halloween, and I'm going to stamp that to my inside panel in that Autumn Blaze ink. So I'm just placing that on my panel to make sure that I have good placement and it's straight. Pick that up with my Misty Door and apply my Autumn Blaze ink. And I'll stamp this a couple times just to make sure I get a good stamped impression. That's why I love my Misty, because I can double stamp and not worry about ruining my project. So stamp it one more time. That's perfect. So now I'm going to embellish this a little bit. I'm going to use my extra ghost that I didn't use on the front of my card. I'm going to place a black piece of cardstock over the eyes so that his eyes show up on the card. And then I'm going to start gluing these pieces down. So I'm going to take my little ghost, struggle with my glue bottle a bit. Ah, there we go. Now I'm going to place a little bit of glue, and then I'm going to adhere that little guy right there next to the happy part of my sentiment. And then I'm going to take 3 bats and glue those down to the left. And I fiddle around with these a little bit just to figure out where I want these to go. Nope, not right there, not right there. Just leave it on the left side like you had originally. All right, a little bit of glue, gluing these down. For the bats on the front of my card, I cut those from a glossy black cardstock. These I just used that same Concord and Ninth black cardstock for the inside. And then I'm going to glue my inside panel down, and this card is complete. How cute. Always finish your inside of your card. It just makes it look finished. So that's that. How cute is this card? I love it. Thank you all so much for joining me on my struggle bus as I created this card. It's really one of my favorite Halloween cards I've made. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, tell me what was your favorite thing about this card, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for future videos. Thank you all. Now go get crafty.
Can I see it, Mom?
Sure.
Can you shake it?
Yeah, shake it.
How did you do this? I'm gonna put it over here. Actually, not here. So it can look better.
It looks better right there.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're right.